sit back and listen to what I'm telling you. You walk into the night, you're ready for a fight. There are those who wanna slay you, and those who gonna love you. And a trick, my friends, knowing who from who. Know what you want to do, what your words, know who you're talking to. Know your stands, know what you're standing for. Ooh, yeah. You know I'm telling you, you walked into the night. You know I'm telling you, get ready for that fight. Oh, oh, yeah. I say to you, stay on your path, my friend, but beware who walks with you. There are those who are gonna stop you, and those who are gonna help you. The trick, my friends, knowing who from who. Steps, know what you want to do, what your words, know who you're talking to. Know your stance, know what you're standing for. Ooh, yeah. You know I'm telling you, you walked into it now. You know I'm telling you, you're ready for that fight. Whoa, whoa, yeah.
That is Slant Six. They're from Edmonton, Alberta. That is The Night Is Gonna Get You. That was released a while back. When did we put that out? Man, seems like quite a while ago since we've heard from the camp over at Slant Six, Sasha Hubert and company. I'm just going to take a look there right now and find out when that actually was, because I'm genuinely curious. So I'm going to go over to their profile on Spotify, and I'm going to take a look and see when we actually released that single. That came out May 4th of this year on 2025. And it's garnered a few thousand streams. It's done really, really well. It fell victim to one of those fraudulent playlists. And that can cause havoc. We're going to talk about stuff like that on tonight's show. So if you're inclined to watch, that's fine. If you're not, you can watch it on the replay, and hopefully, I'm just not talking to dead air here, and I can reach one person who, kind of likes what we're doing, because that's the goal here, is to, organically reach out to people and, try and build a musical community, not just with our independent record label, but through this whole process of networking I think networking is really, really important. And I'm going to see if I can switch things up here because, all right, we'll see. Nope, I just mucked it up on my end. So I got to load a new snapshot over here. So I'm mucking around here with the sound, trying to figure things out. What I want to talk about is these very things. Tonight we're going to talk about stuff going on in the music industry. And my computer is not cooperating tonight, so I don't know. We could have some major problems here. Things don't want. Yeah, I know. Close, will you? There you go. I don't know why that was happening, but user error is usually the fault there. I'm going to remove this video source. And if you want to join me over in the chat room, I love people when they join the chat room and ask questions. Maybe nobody's watching tonight. Hopefully we're actually broadcasting the show and we're actually reaching someone, maybe just you. That's right, just you, only you. Think of it that way. So we'll see what happens as the evening progresses here. I want to talk a little bit of some stuff that's happened in the world of streaming and the world of digital music. And these are things that you should know, right? Things that you should know. And they're really important. I'm not liking my monitoring here, so I'm going to try and load another snapshot here. And hopefully I can find it in my recording settings. And there it is. That's even better. Okay. So there's some things that happen in terms of releasing music that has changed the landscape. And those are some very important pieces of publishing. So publishing music is a couple of different fronts. And there are a couple of different things that people need to keep in mind. And I was saying before I think on the last show, was talking about this kind of stuff and was saying that that as music gets released, publishing it is ever more important than it's ever been. It's extremely important. And one of the reasons it's extremely important in terms of publishing music and to make sure that you have full ownership of your music is because of some of the fundamental rights that have changed to rights holders on platforms such as Spotify, iTunes. And here's the latest. There was a recent blast about YouTube. Some high-ranking exec in the music industry said, I've always been here to advocate for artists. And, what's happening here is YouTube is ripping off artists worse than any download and streaming service. So go figure. YouTube is a huge conglomerate, part of the whole Google family, I believe, and a whole bunch more other stuff. And they control a great deal of the algorithms that are relative to creative content on the internet. People don't realize, or maybe some people do, but this is stuff that you should know, right? And I said that, I prefaced tonight's show, and I said, stuff you should know, part 1. Because I said stuff that you could know or might not know, and we talked about that the last couple of weeks. This is stuff you should know that's actually happening in terms of fundamental services shifting, like Spotify, iTunes, and others that you will use your digital music if you're an independent artist. Even those of you that are working with so-called record labels, and I say that with tongue in cheek because I have artists on my label who were signed to major record labels who left money on the table. They did not properly represent the artist, in my estimation, and in many ways failed the artist in terms of certain protections and all this other great stuff that we're going to talk about, stuff you should know. And this is stuff you should know, and it should inform your practice as a musician, as an independent musician. I'm going to see if I can, muck around with this camera angle. I like to screw around with the camera once in a while. So the really important thing about publishing is making sure that you own every single right to your music. And for independent artists, this is a pretty easy, it's a pretty easy equation. And the equation is, if you're the independent artist, if you own the publishing, the written works to your music, and you own the digital masters to your music, then you are a 100% rights owner. Now, what you should know is how you should go about offering yourself every protection available to protect yourself, to protect your investment, your time, your money, your effort that you put into recording your works. You don't just want to give that away. It's an investment of sorts. It's an investment in getting discovered. It's an investment in a fan base finding you. Because your fan bases find you, you don't necessarily find them. However, analytics that we use, those inform us about those markets that may be more penetrable than others. And last year we had some great successes through that. By exploiting those markets, we were able to move our artist music into 175 countries around the world. Now, you would never get that level of distribution with CDs or vinyl. And I'm involved heavily right now in a digital, a CD, and a vinyl release by a band called Helix, who is on my independent record label. And we have been slowly releasing Helix's music, stuff that they recorded way back before they ever got signed to a major record label. And back in the day, before they got signed with a major record label, they had 2 independent albums that they put out. Now, there's been a little dispute about a certain track on that album. You're going to have to go to Helix, the band page, if you want to find out the details. And I encourage you to join in on the banter, because it was great. A couple of people called me out on my post saying, no, that track wasn't released on that album. It never was. And they were absolutely correct. I told them they were wrong, but I had to go back and edit my remarks to say, sorry, you were kind of wrong, but not fully right about that. So here's the interesting thing. That particular track was recorded as a demo when the band was still an independent artist, and the demo never saw the light of day. There's 2 demos, actually, that were part of that recording that have been resurrected by me and remastered by me, and we're releasing them under Indie Tunes Records, because we believe that the Helix fans and followers, people that have followed them for years, who are part of their family, their extended family, they should have access to something that was really, really an intimate and cool part of the band's history. So that's, a cool thing, right? To be able to put in that discography, so that there's tracks that are actually part of their development as an artist. And this is why I always say to artists, there is value in publishing your old catalog of music, because when people discover you, one of the things they want to know is, and this is something you should know, and if you don't know it, you should jot it down and burn this into your memory. right? You want this exposure that you can get. And so getting exposure is a big deal because, as I said, streaming services are not so much about making money, although they do if you get in the millions and billions of streams. But they are about three things that I always say. And if you don't know these things, you write these things down and you burn them into your memory. One is reach. Where can you put your music where you can get as much reach as possible? Well, Spotify has the market share when it comes to digital music distribution and digital markets and all the access that they have. And that gives an artist reach. But through that reach, they also gain exposure. So now you're getting reach and exposure, or sometimes exposure and reach. I mean, it can go a whole lot of different ways. And believe it or not, there's some really great organic growth processes that exist within the Spotify algorithmic world. People don't realize this because they don't take time to study it. All they say, oh, those damn algorithms. The algorithms are useful tools to direct people to your music and give them a pleasurable listening experience. Release Radar being one of those. And another cool tool within there are these suggested playlists, right? Where your music ends up on suggested playlists or community-based playlists, and all of a sudden someone discovers your music. By having things set up so that your music can be added to these playlists, it gives you exposure. It gives you reach. And then the final of the three is engagement. You need engagement. Oh, here's Brent Durner from My Wicked Twin. I love this guy. Can you do the best job? Baby record companies should tune into this broadcast. You've got the legal poop down pat. Good job. Now, here's a guy that was signed to a major record deal. If anybody would know, it's this guy, right? He knows what major record deals look like, and he knows what my record deal looks like, and they're vastly, vastly different because our artists own 100% of their music. Oh, say what? You say your artists have 100% control of their music? And I say, yes, 100%. And why? It's their product. It's not mine. I don't want to own it. I want to exploit it. I want to work with them to help make money off of it because whatever I make, they make 3 times as much as me. Right? So could you imagine being signed to a record label where as an artist, you get to earn 3 times what the label earns off your music? And it's derivative works. Oh, there's that nasty word, derivative works. Do you know what those mean? Do you know how you can claim access to those derivative works? Do you know how you can put in copyright claims and copyright strikes? Tonight, I played a track at the beginning of the show. It's a track by Slant Six called The Night Is Gonna Get You. You should listen to it. It's a great track. It's well produced. Phil Anderson, I believe, is involved in that process. Phil was on the show. He's a record producer from Edmonton, Alberta. I think I'm going to have him back on the show. He's a brilliant guy. He's worked with bands like Econoline, Crush, and a few others, to mention names, just to throw a couple of names out there. All right. They're a great band and they deserve to get credit for their music. So every time somebody watches this show, the band Slant Six, who's signed to Indie Tunes Records, will make money off of every video play here because their music is copyright protected in so many ways out the yin-yang that Facebook partners with our licensing companies, and I get a notification after the show saying you use copyright work on your show. And it'll give me the option of sharing the revenue with the copyright claimant. Well, guess who the copyright claimant will be? It is the publishing end of our company. Now, it's subcontracted work, but it's done by a third party, but it's by a third party that we have a long-standing, well-established relationship with. And the information is reliable. And that's a cool thing. These are things that you should know. There's a lot of things you should know. Here's something you should know. The music industry has officially declared war on Suno and Udio. Now, do you know who Suno and Udio is? They're two of the most prominent AI music generators. They're a group of music labels, including Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, and Sony Music Group, has filed lawsuits in U.S. federal court on Monday morning alleging copyright infringement on a massive scale. The plaintiff is seeking $150,000 per work that's been infringed. Wow, that's a pretty stiff fine. Somebody's going to spend a lifetime paying that off, and they're probably going to win it because AI, the training that's in the AI, and from what information has already become available, it's quite apparent that the AI companies involved, or it looks apparent, let's just say that, it's alleged, and it looks apparent that they manipulated the market by emulating some very prominent personalities in the music industry. So take a look at it. It's in a well, I can post the article here. Here's a funny thing about this. I can post these articles in here, which is weird because they don't let you post news articles anywhere. It's just bizarre. Anyways, if you go to this article called Wired, it explains the whole thing about the major labels suing the AI music industry and AI groups that are training AI to emulate and copy the likeness of some very, very famous and successful artists when producing their AI music, which is an infringement of a whole lot of things, I think. Most likely people's right to their own personal entity and not having someone emulate it or clone you without your permission. Because this is akin to cloning someone without their permission, right? So there's a whole lot of ethical stuff involved in this, even if, and I don't know, I mean, AI is here to stay, but AI was not intended. If you look at how AI was created, it was developed with the idea that it was going to make our lives easier by removing redundancies in our lives and helping us. That was the original intent of AI. It was never to replace the creative human mind, which is full of emotions, which is full of a whole lot of flesh and blood experience that AI will never be able to understand or feel because it's a program built on logic. It doesn't feel. It can be told how to feel, but it is not self-aware where it can feel on its own, and its decisions about feelings are based rather more in logic than they are in feelings themselves. That's kind of like the whole thing, right? Boiler Beach says, "What's up? We trust you, Kenny." Oh, well, thanks. It doesn't show up over here for some reason, which I'm really sorry it doesn't. I'm going to like your, I'm going to, hang on a sec. I got to it's sometimes it lets me like, sometimes it pops up the emotion and then it lets me do nothing. It's so silly. It acts up all the time. Here, I'll heart there. Boiler Beach, thanks for joining us. Yeah, you know, the most important thing that you should know is get to know who you're working with, who's an extension of you. So as an independent record label, I see what we do as an extension of the artist. And there's some back scratching that goes back and forth because you got to have a little back scratching to make it feel good, right? I mean, nobody wants to be the back scratcher all the time. It's nice to receive once in a while rather than always be given, right? So our goal is to build a trusting, reciprocal relationship with our artists. And it's about loyalty. It's about brand. It's about developing a community, a like-minded community, because we're all doing this because we love what we do. It sure as hell is not about the money. Not right now. Not for a lot of artists who are just, getting on people's radar, and for artists who are just trying to figure their way, through this muddled world, and it gets muddled all the time by AI and all the other developments and things that are happening on download and streaming services. There's a lot of nonsense that's gone on. But there's also some really good things happening there that help artists to get discovered, to get people to find their way, find their audience, and allow people like me to try to exploit those markets to a greater extent, try to find a broader audience and maybe a deeper audience, right? The goal is, and I know people hate this when I push on Spotify, but Spotify, of all the streaming services, has these innate abilities built within its algorithms to support organic growth. And they are not in favor of people gaming the system. That's why they're trying to deal with these bot farms. That's why they're trying to figure out, what's a fake stream versus a real stream? How can we tell the difference between a fake stream and a real stream? Well, if they're coming from bot farms, there are certain signatures that let them know they're coming from bot farms. And it's really easy for you to fall victim. So here's something you should know. You should know what playlists your music is on, and you should be checking the legitimacy of those playlists as an artist. It's your product. You should know or have a good idea where your product is, what playlist it gets accepted to, right? It's your product. It's yours to market. It's ours to distribute. It's ours to get it in front of as many people as possible. But you, the artist, are the best salesperson ever of your product. You are so intimately familiar with it. Now, there's another copyright protection: familiarity. How do you embed that information in a digital track so that there's undisputable proof that there's an intimate knowledge of the development of that song? Only the artist, only the author would know those intimate details about why the song was written. If that information is somehow embedded in that data, then it offers another form of copyright protection and indisputable proof that that track belongs to you, the artist. These are things that keep me up at night. These are things that I work diligently to do to help our artists' rights of their music to be fully protected, or as protected as we can help it to be, right? None of us, including the artists on the label, have deep enough pockets to hire corporate lawyers to figure this out. We have to work our way through the rules of the music industry, and where those rules are kind of gray, which is good in some reaches, because it gives you a little bit of leeway to be creative in terms of what you do in today's digital markets. Today's digital markets are not the same digital markets that existed, okay, when Napster was shut down. And Napster got shut down July of 11th of 2001. There was a court injunction ordering it to block copyrighted music. And eventually the original company filed for bankruptcy and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, it came to a massive crash. So you got around 2001, right around that area, Napster being shut down. And that was largely orchestrated by Lars Ulrich. I want to give him the credit because people were hating on him for doing this. But he took on Napster and said, wait a minute, you're using copyrighted works that the rights holders have rights to. Now, it didn't mean that Metallica actually had the rights to the music, because it might have been their label at the time that had the rights to the music. But if the label can collect revenue off those rights, part of your contract is receiving a percentage of that revenue. So it's well within your purview to make sure that your rights are protected and that you can be properly remunerated for your works when someone is using them. That's why you license your music, so that you can collect royalties off your music in the long run. Now, it does take a lot of interaction for you to start collecting said royalties. But some artists collect royalties from several different streams. Some being the publishing stream. Some being where their music is registered digitally to collect royalties off of music plays. So every time the track is played, there's a code called an ISRC code that is a unique fingerprint to that release. And I say that release. To collect royalties off sound plays. Now, that's different than the publishing rights of the music being used to create another work. So somebody wants to record your song, but they want to record it to a different melody, right? Or they like your song so much they're going to do their own cover. If you have your music published correctly, you would grant those rights for someone to buy licensing to reproduce your music. Because if it goes viral, you're going to be a good benefactor of that track going viral, because maybe somebody recorded in a way that it just became a song, it became viral. Maybe you recorded something that was too off the beaten path, and somebody took the song and made it into a mainstream song, and boom, it's a one-hit wonder all of a sudden. Who would have known? If you license your music to be able to be used, there's a good possibility it could be used in many different ways, shapes, and forms that would bring you some additional revenue. After all, if you own 100% of the rights to your music, there's a good opportunity there for you to earn some money. And we just learned today through a conversation of someone who has music that's been licensed to a couple of major television shows. Now, I don't think they're major anymore, but they were out there. And so there would be, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of plays of that particular track. And the question was that track properly registered at the time in order to be able to collect those rights, or are those rights somehow unclaimed royalties? And we found an ISRC where that track was published, and it's a good possibility that that ISRC, this is before my time, was never registered correctly, so someone could collect the royalties off of that sync licensing. So there may be sync licensing royalties on the table, is what I'm saying, by not having a track registered appropriately and licensed for that purpose. So, for example, if you're in Canada, I'm going to take a look and see if I can find the counterpart for the US, because it would be important for those of you that are south of the border to know. But here in Canada, you used to be able to sign up with a company called Connect Music Canada. Now, Connect Music Canada was all about licensing. So you could provide blanket rights for your music to be licensed and used in derivative works. Someone comes along and wants to license it. They like one of your songs. They want to license it to be played every time their podcast airs. That's a good thing, right? If their podcast goes viral, that means every time their podcast airs and every time somebody watches it, you're going to earn some royalties off your song. So that's a good thing. This is something you should know, how to go about registering that stuff or working with someone who's going to help you walk the gauntlet, because it is a bit of a daunting task. For those of you that are just, and a lot of you are novices at this. A lot of people think that, I'm fully skilled at this and I know what I'm doing. I took a course in marketing. I did I did all this. Nothing, I'm going to tell you, nothing supersedes real-time, flesh and blood experience. And since I started doing this almost 10 years ago, I have learned so much that I feel I'm at some sort of an advanced level in terms of understanding the digital world and understanding that it is a market that can be exploited. But if you're after organic growth, you're not going to get fast results overnight. There's a lot of things involved. So something you should know is, how do you engage your audience? Well, the folks over at Boiler Beach are watching. If you talk to our friends at Boiler Beach, they will tell you that they work very hard at engaging an audience. And it shows. Yes, it does. Now, I want to kind of go back to this history thing, okay? So 2000, you've got LimeWire, which was another file sharing service where people could download MP3s and sometimes WAV files ad nauseum and then put them to the playlist for free. And the same thing existed with Napster. So they shut those down. And then the independent or the major record labels went bonkers trying to figure out how they were going to now live in the digital world and publish in a digital world, and how they were going to get their artist music listened to in a digital world, because the backbone didn't exist. There was no backbone for all this. Go back and look at history and look at what happened with LimeWire and happened with Napster. I got to tell you, if you go back and look back in history, what happened to those two, and then how the major music industry failed to come up with a backbone. So, what do we got? 2008, fast forward 8 years, right? I'm going to do this again. I'm going to Google search again. I'm going to put, when did Spotify When did Spotify launch? What's your guess? Well, if you said October 7th, 2008, you might be right. It launched initially in Scandinavian countries, the United Kingdom, France, Spain, beginning with an invitation-only model for its free service and providing access to its premium paid service for everyone. So you got to look at this. Spotify actually got founded in 2006, but it never went to a public launch until 2008. So we got almost 8 years in there that there's no backbone for digital music, file sharing. So CDs are still a thing, and people are still collecting CDs. They're nice, tangible, because there's some artwork in them. On a scaled down version, which you get on a 12 by 12 album, you get on what? I don't know. What is a CD? 5.5 by 5.5, something like that. The jewel case, I mean. And then you've got artwork inside, outside. And there were nice fold outs with decent sized lyrics. I think maybe a 9 font, maybe a 10 font on some of them. The best ones were the black lyrics on a white background. A lot easier to read and a lot easier for people to throw on, scan them, and enlarge them, right? Those were really great. The lyric sheets were an awesome thing. They were the forerunner to publishing lyrics digitally. And then what's come since then is now syncing the lyrics with the song, because Spotify offers, I don't know, some kind of karaoke looking part on there that allows you to, karaoke the lyrics along with the artist and get to learn the song. Great thing. It's a great tool. And there are memorable parts of songs that, that just stick in your mind. So we got a single coming out by Helix, who is on our record label, and I want to talk about that a little bit. It's going to lead to a full digital release of an album called Scrap Metal, and Brent Durner and a bunch of people in the Helix family have been involved in producing this album, playing on it, singing on it, putting guitar licks in it. It's been a real collaborative project, and Daryl Gray and Aaron Murray from Daryl is from the St. Catharines area. He's the bassist in the band Helix, and then you've got Aaron, who is an award-winning engineer, and this collaborative is a brilliant project. It was an ambitious undertaking, and there's a cool single that's going to be coming out. It's called Stuck in the 80s. And I can't get parts of the chorus out of my head. And I can think of other versions of this song that should be written and recorded by the same band. And that's probably going to be part of an ongoing marketing discussion down the road. Because I had a great conversation with Brian Vollmer tonight, and he said, stay tuned, because you still haven't heard the last of Helix. 51 years these guys are going, and Brian's a long way from stopping recording music. In fact, we talked about another song that was, and Brent, if you're watching the show, you might remember the title of this song. It's called Check Out the Love. And I've got a really rough demo of the song, but it really deserves a really, really good recording. I thought it was a great tune. I think it was well conceived. It's a rockin' in your face rock tune. So, you may see that release soon. And then I took some flack over the release of White Lace and Black Leather, which never really did exist on the White Lace and Black Leather album. Here's an interesting thing about Helix. I want to go back. You talk about history and you think about marketing ploys. So their first album is called Breaking Loose. There is no title track on that album. Breaking Loose, the title track, which you thought would have been the title track for the Breaking Loose album, actually appears on the second album, White Lace and Black Leather. Interesting concept. And on the White Lace and Black Leather album, there is no title track called White Lace and Black Leather. That got released later, I believe after Helix got signed. Now, there was, in the digital archives, I found the demo version of that song, and it's a completely different arrangement than the one that got recorded under a major signing. And it was recorded while the band was still independent. It was never used, and it was never part of anyone's catalog except where it existed in some files on Brian Vollmer's computer. Anyway, we were able to resurrect that song, and also another tune called When the Fire is Hot. Those were two demo songs that may never have seen the light of day. And they never really did see the light of day in those versions that were recorded. And I say versions because if you hear the arrangements, they're two very different arrangements. And I think one song is almost a minute longer than the other one. So a very completely different version of the song. So some really cool, interesting stuff that you find out as you do research. So stuff you should know. You should know stuff through research. Research things relative to your music. And if you don't have the time to do it, find somebody like me that will help you muddle your way through it, because there are no clear pathways for everyone. Everybody that's come to me on this record label have come to me with all very different learning curves and where they are on that learning curve. And some of them, like Brenny says, this stuff just gives him a brain cramp. Makes me laugh when he says that. And I got to put his comment up there. He says, Ken, you do the best job. Baby, record companies should tune into this broadcast. You've got the legal poop down pat. Good job. Well, like I say, I try and make sure that the legal parts are covered to the best of my knowledge. But my disclaimer is I am not a lawyer and I'm not giving people legal advice. I am just following what I believe the industry allows us to do without getting our hands slapped, because we live in a creative industry. So I would like to think that as artists, because we're creative, and especially for independent artists, that there would be some room for you to be creative in terms of the way you go about marketing yourself. There is no cookie cutter approach for everybody. If there was, that would be so effing boring. That would be so boring, right? If we had to use a cookie cutter approach with everybody. Every artist that I work with, it's a completely different approach, and yet there are some similarities. There's some things that we recognize that are wins. One of the things we don't do is use any third party or any illegitimate means of gaming the system. Now, there are ways that you can seed the system, which can be helpful. Find some super followers, some super fans, people that are engaged, that are willing to make you part of their regular listening. They might listen to your song 1 or 2 times a day in their playlist. Think about listening to your local rock station. You ever listen to the playlist on the local rock station and how often the songs are repeated on the playlist? Check it out sometime and see that within an hour, you might hear the same song at least twice, but in a different part of the rotation. It varies from radio station to radio station, but the repetition is there. If you had super followers or people that are really engaged in what you're doing and they want to help you, then you could be part of, you might be part of their workout. Maybe I'll stream your song 10 times while I work out. That's my 30-minute workout. The 3-minute track. I'll make it a 30-minute workout and I'll listen to your track 30 times or 10 times, whatever, during my workout. That's legitimate. If you are a Spotify subscriber, you can multiple stream an artist's music as many times as you want without being penalized. And it's a legitimate stream because it's coming from a legitimate IP address that's paid for a premium subscription to Spotify. Now, if you just had that on a 24 repeat, it might not have the same effect, and then it might be picked up as artificial because it just doesn't look legit, right? But if you had 1,000 dedicated followers who would stream your song multiple times in a week, let's say your 1,000 followers would stream your song 10 times in the first week it gets released. Oh my God, you just went from 1,000 to 10,000 streams in a week. Now, what do you think that would do to the algorithms, the organic algorithms that exist within Spotify? If there were legitimately 1,000 people who had streamed your song 10 times, right? 10 times in that week, you would go from 1,000 streams to 10,000 streams in that 1 week. Spotify would recognize that as organic growth coming from legitimate sources that are streaming your music and that they are maybe part of a listening group. There are people out there who listen to songs as groups because they can use Spotify. They'll listen to a song and then they will get together on an online forum and discuss the song and critique the song. There are people out there that you can get to review your song that way, where they're listening groups. Discover them, find them. That's something you should know. There are listening groups out there. If you don't have a listening group, maybe you need a listening group. Oh, there's something you should know as an artist. Do you have a listening group of 10 people that you can share your track with before you release it? Get some feedback on its playability. Did they like it? Did they like the lyrics? Did they like the flow of the melody? Did they like the mix? All those kinds of questions that tell you whether you've got a quality product or not. You remember like Mattel and those companies, right? They used to have focus groups, kids, right? Mattel would come out with the next greatest toy and they'd have a study group of 30 kids? And they give them that toy to play with, right? They're looking for feedback from, well, they weren't the consumers, the parents were, but who's the kid bugging their mom and dad for the latest and greatest next toy from Mattel or, Hot Wheels or whatever company was manufacturing toys back in the day, right? They had a target audience that they were going after. If you develop a target audience of listeners who are willing to critique and give you honest feedback about your music, that's great. If you got a couple of music programmers at radio stations that you trust enough to give you some feedback, maybe they might say, This track just is not of the quality that we would play on our radio station. And they might be able to give you some valuable feedback as to why. It might sound too amateurish. It might not sound polished enough. There could be a whole lot of reasons that they will give you that help you understand that they see your product as substandard. And that substandard ability could be based on your previous works. Now, sometimes we are our own worst enemy when we set the bar too high on the first song, because that means we either got to continue to meet that bar, right? We're always worried about producing perfection the first time we put something out the gate, without realizing that we're human, we're fallible, we make mistakes. That's the great thing about humans making music, that fallibility, that vulnerableness that makes us human can be conveyed in the music. You can't convey those thoughts, those feelings with AI. AI is not capable of learning those intense emotions and conveying them to an audience, but you can. You can, and you can draw in an audience by that. Some artists' music is used for music therapy and mental health because it has a relaxing factor. It has something that offers the listener some level of therapy and some level of release, because music is an escape to some degree as well, right? It's an escape from the mundane. It's an escape from reality sometimes. And sometimes there are bands who take us on magical journeys with their music, or sometimes they just ignite a part of us that just grooves with the tune and can get down with the lyric. Whatever it is, it's relatable, right? Something you should know is write something that's relatable, but not just to you. How can you engage your audience if you are not writing music that is engaging? Now, you might say, no, I don't want to do that. And that's a different pathway. There's no right or wrong about that. If you say, no, I don't want to do that, I want to write music that pleases myself. And if I find a listening audience along the way, bonus. Mostly this is for my edification. Maybe it's for me just to prove that I'm capable of producing great works, or in my mind, they're decent works. They might not relate to other people, but I don't care. I am creating something, or I'm developing a product that I like, that I'm happy with, something that gives me great joy to produce, not where I'm making something that's a cookie cutter thing that I'm really not happy doing. We've all been there. We've all worked jobs we don't like. That's tough for a musician if they're writing and recording music that they really don't like, but they're doing it for all the wrong reasons. So know your reasons. Know your goals. There's something you should know. I'm going to talk about goals, goal orientation, and I want to delve into that whole business of objectives. What are objectives? Right? What are your goals and objectives? As an artist, you need to have goals and objectives. That's something you should know. What are your goals? What are your objectives? Next time, right here on the Indie Show, we're going to talk about that. And maybe I'm going to have a special guest on the show next week. See if I can rouse somebody up that wants to talk about this very topic, right? What you should know, that's stuff you should know. Until then, this has been the Indie Show. I'm Kenny. You're not. This has been the Indie Show. And have a great hump day, what's left of it, and a great rest of your week. Peace out, everybody.